Hello there. This week, I have gotten to do my most favorite thing that I ever get to do in my business, and that is strategy sessions with business owners who are using their podcasts to grow their businesses. So I thought I might pop in here and give you three super easy tips that you could literally implement today that would make a huge difference in how you continue the conversation with your audience after your podcast. So let's jump in. The first one is your call to action doesn't have to wait until the end of your podcast. Before you introduce your guest, especially if you have a recorded intro that you're doing on your own, or if not, you can do this live, and that is insert a call to action before you intro. So you want to make sure it's a warm invitation. For example, you could say, hey, before we get into the podcast, I want you to head on over to produceyourpodcast.com/learn to find out more about our info session. Now, of course, we want you to do that after you listen to the podcast, but wanted to make you aware of it so that you could know about that program now. Let's get into the podcast. Do you see what I did there? And then number two is when you're wrapping up the show, you really want to be sure that you continue that warm invitation concept. So what I'm talking about is you thank your guest or you're wrapping up your content, and before you close out the show, take that opportunity to make a personal invitation for your audience to connect back with you. You could restate the original call to action from the beginning of the podcast, or you could say something very simple like, if you are enjoying this podcast, I would love to continue this conversation with you on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn at Traci DeForge. So that is something that you want to do that makes the audience feel super personally connected to you and that encourages them to want to continue to stay connected to you. And then the third tip is let's simplify that recorded call to action at the end of your podcast. One of the things that I find is people are junking that recorded close up with find me on Twitter, connect with me on LinkedIn, watch my YouTube, go to my website. It's just too much. We really only need to instruct our audience to do one super simple thing. And it needs to be evergreen because it's something that you don't want to update frequently, especially if it's a professional voiceover who has recorded the close. So get that URL for your podcast, redirect it to your website if it's your existing website, your podcast lives on your existing website, and tell your audience to go to that URL. And then once they get there, it's off to the races. You can have them sign up for the newsletter. You can have a pop-up. You can do all kinds of things. But the confused mind says no. So don't make them confused. Just give them that one thing to do. All right, quick recap. One, warm call to action at the beginning of the episode. Before we get into this podcast, let me ask you to do this one thing. Two, warm invite call to action before you wrap up the podcast with that super personal invitation of what you want them to do. And then three, simplify that recorded close. Send them to your website using the podcast URL redirected, and then let them do whatever it is that you want them to do once they get there. All right, if these growth acceleration tips are resonating with you, we have a free info session coming up next week, and it's not going to be fluffy. It's going to be tactical with tons of tools and tips just like these. And I just want you to do this one thing. I just want you to go to produceyourpodcast.com/learn and find out more about the info session and sign up for it, because I really want to see you there, because I really, really love helping you grow your show.